Now, one person we did hear from today for the first time, Karen Reed herself, doubling down, of course, saying she did not do this. She wants to know who did.
Said it feels we're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in only one trying to save his life.
Why'd you admit to it?
She didn't admit to it. She didn't admit to anything close to that. Nothing close to that. And you should know that.
That was like 3 or 4 times she admitted to it.
No, she didn't.
That's not true.
She asked a question. She asked a question, which is very different. She didn't admit to anything.
Let's go.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, here we go. How is everybody? Happy Saturday. So on, was it Thursday? We had a treat in the Karen Reed case for everybody following the Karen Reed case. We had a hearing, a really long hearing with Karen Reed's new pro bono lawyer, Robert Alessi, and boy, was he verbose and self-indulgent. I don't know. You know, this is one of these things where he took up the majority of the time, and I had to wonder, had there been a male judge, would he had stopped it and said, like, look, you know, he said in the beginning maybe around the 2.5 hour period, 3 hour period, that he had 45 minutes left. And he took up 3 more hours. I mean, how do you say I have approximately 45 minutes left and take up 3 hours? But okay, we're going to watch some of Dr. Marie Russell's direct. We're going to watch all of her cross with Hank Brennan, who really shined in this cross from beginning sentence 1. He was out punching. His language is very interesting. We're going to look at that. But before we do, there's a little controversy in the Karen Reed world. A gentleman called up to JFK's show, which has nothing to do with JFK. All us older people, of course, think of JFK Jr., but it doesn't. And people are saying this is Brian Higgins calling up, arguing for the other side. This is a pro Karen Reed podcast. What do you call it? Live stream podcast?
From
Kevin.
You're live with JFK and James.
Hey, man, what's up, guys? Kevin from South Boston.
What's up, Kevin from Southie? What's happening?
No, listen, I appreciate the things that you two do, you and James, right? But let me ask you something. Those 2 dudes that you're accusing, right? They're decorated dudes. What happens? Like, can you look at this from both sides? And this comes out that she actually did it. Are you ready to, like, you know, put it out there that you were wrong?
You sound like Higgins, bro.
So is that Higgins? Let me give you a little recap of Higgins. Here's Higgins reading the text messages. Let me go forward to where it gets more interesting.
The extent of the actual communication via text between the defendant and I was between January 12th and January 29th when John passed. On the 28th and 29th, the 28th, I sent a text, as we spoke about before when we were at the waterfall. That text didn't respond. There was a text sent by the defendant to me the next day. So in that time period between the 12th and the 29th, there was 9 days that the defendant and I exchanged text messages. With that being said, those text messages, I don't believe, were every day, consecutive days. There was 9 days in between the 12th and the 29th.
And so as far as that questioning, as far as posing to her, why did she reach out to you? Was that something that you asked once or more than once?
Yeah, I asked it more than once, and during the pendency of this communication, I was basically trying to suss out what the intentions were of the defendant. Was the defendant interested in me? Was she at the end of her relationship with John?
He sussed her out all right. He sussed her out a little too well for Karen Reed. Not easily controlled. Not a good mark for her. Is way too curious, inquisitive, and aware of different personality disorders, I believe. But there's his voice. Let's listen to it one more time.
From
Kevin.
You live with JFK and James.
Hey, man, what's up, guys? Kevin from South Boston.
What's up, Kevin from Southie? What's happening?
No, listen, I appreciate the things that you two do, you and James, right? But let me ask you something. Those two dudes that you're accusing, right? They're decorated dudes. What happens? Like, can you look at this from both sides? And this comes out that she actually did it. Are you ready to, like, you know, put it out there that you were wrong?
You sound like Higgins, bro.
You wrong.
Is this Higgins?
Is this Higgins?
You wrong.
You're Higgins.
Why are we wrong? Why are we wrong?
Fucking Higgins. Higgins called the phone. He hung up. That was Higgins, bro.
So I know there's a lot of wrong identifications on both sides of this community. Certainly I've been victim of it. But what do you guys think? I don't think it sounds like him. That's just my take. Some qualities the same, but there's a different quality in his voice, but that may be having to do with the microphone that he talked in. That can change the quality of your voice a bit. So that is all the discussion in Free Karen Reed. But if you forgot about Dr. Marie Russell, she's a former ER doctor. She also worked in the coroner's office in LA. She also worked in Los Angeles, California State Prison. And this is a great example, I thought, of what it looks like to prepare a witness, to really rehearse a witness. And you'll see why Brennan picked up on it immediately, that there was quite a difference with her first testimony. First testimony she did in the first trial, it almost didn't get in, but it was a very short voir dire. It was no 6-hour voir dire, that's for sure, by Alan Jackson. And she said she read about the case in the paper. She got in touch with friend of this show, John Lewin, DA John Lewin, who wants nothing. I contacted him for a comment. He wants nothing to do with it. Not even a comment he wants to give about it. I think he's hoping it passes like a fart in the wind. She came off as an attention seeker, someone who is a true crime buff. And in fact, she is a true crime buff. There was an article. Interestingly, she's had 2 articles written about her in the paper. And I would think that she found these journalists to write about her just the way she found Alan Jackson through DA John Lewin. She needs attention. That's something Brennan picked up on, is her narcissism. And he really played into it. We'll watch all of it. But after a little bit of her long direct by new pro bono lawyer Alessi, here she is, one-of-a-kind trauma doctor. In her prized time off, she manages to put the darkness aside to swim or camp, although she does admit her preferred recreational reading is true crime. Maybe she should read a little bit more about dog bites. She admitted in this cross that she's read no books about dog bites, only a couple articles. She really looks like someone who's got involved watching Turtle Boy, reading Turtle Boy, got involved in the whole drama of the Karen Reed pre-trial innocence fraud campaign and wanted some money, wanted some attention. Heard some nonsense. I mean, there's so much nonsense on both sides of this Karen Reed thing. But as far as like helping, like I keep hearing people saying like she wants to help the defense. She doesn't want to help the defense. She wants money. It's not like it's a cause for her. She wants money and she's willing to stretch her interests. I mean, have we not forgotten? Do I still have this up in here? Hold on one second. Let me see if I still have this. Thought I did. Maybe just be in a different spot. Oh, I don't. Hold on one second. Let me find it. But have we not forgotten Dominic Dunn and his great quote about expert witnesses? Here it is. Hold on. What? I really wish I had just like, I wish I had a staff of people to help me pull up this stuff sometimes. Thank you for your patience. He called them whores of the court.
I only cover the trials of the rich, powerful, and famous because it is different for them than for other people, because they've got the bucks to spend on the $1 million lawyers, and they've got the bucks to bring in the expert witnesses. Jurors fall for those expert witnesses every time. I call them whores of the court because they can be bought by either side.
There's the great Vanity journalist Dominic Dunn and novelist, nonfiction book writer, but mostly known for his journalism in Vanity Fair, which makes Karen Reed, that article written about Karen Reed and Vanity Fair, so tragic, because Vanity Fair used to have really great true crime coverage back in the day. And to go from that to, what's her name? Julie Miller. It's so sad. Her, just such a pro killer. Joseph Albatross says, Alessi was very proud of the report he edited. Exactly. She's going to admit that she was helped with the report by the lawyer. You can't do that. You're an independent expert. You're supposed to be giving your expert opinion, not the defense lawyer's opinion. Hey, Patty. So nice to see you. Gotta run soon, but happy to hear your voice. Happy to see you, Patty. If you don't know Patty's Playhouse, check it out. It's channel I enjoy watching.
Dog bites or dog wounds in that capacity in the emergency department of LAC-USC?
In the main emergency department, yes.
In the main emergency department. And did you also treat, beyond dog-induced wounds, general animal-induced wounds that were not from a dog?
Yes.
Describe some of the animal wounds, non-dog animal wounds that you would observe and treat in the regular emergency department.
Well, the most common one was the cat. But beyond that, we would see wounds from skunks, rats, raccoons. I recall seeing an opossum wound one time because, you know.
Odd she didn't pick out spider bites. That's what I would think. Any kind of insect bite. Would think you would see a lot of spider bites. But she says she's seen 500, over 1,000 altogether, including her supervision dog bites in her time. That to me seems inflated. Anyone else think that?
What type of practice of medicine, what did you do specifically with the wounds?
So when a patient came in with a wound.
And I'm talking dog bite wounds.
Okay, well, first I had to figure out if it was a dog bite. Because some patients couldn't tell us what kind of animal bit them. Most of the time they could, but some couldn't. Some were young, some, there were various reasons. There was sometimes language barriers. So I had to figure out what type of animal inflicted the wound. And there was a very important clinical reason for that.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
So this seems to be something that she's been coached on, having to say that she had to figure out what kind of wound it is without the information being given to her. Because most people come in and say, hey, I've been bitten by a dog. Hey, stitch it up. So keep that in mind, because this is going to come into play again. I think she's been told by Robert Alessi that because she's chosen to insert herself into this trial as a quote-unquote dog bite expert after writing 2 articles on canine dogs, which are very different than Chloe was the family dog. But okay. I think he told her to really say that just like John O'Keefe couldn't tell you that what his wounds came from. In the emergency room, you had to do the same thing. You had to determine. And she circles back to this same subject. So keep this in mind, because it's going to come into play with Brennan's Cross.
I think you testified earlier about specifically what you did with the wound. What did you do specifically with the dog, these approximately more than 500 dog-inflicted wounds? What did you do specifically, so to speak, with your hands?
Okay. Well, I was clearly interested in wounds, and particularly bite wounds. I was very interested in this, so it got my attention all the time. And so what I would first do, I had to do a differential diagnosis, but physically, if I determined it was a dog bite wound, then I'd render the appropriate treatment. Sometimes there was perforation of the skin and lacerations, and those lacerations sometimes needed debridement, which is cutting away from the edges and the dead tissue, any devitalized tissue, and some were large enough that they actually needed suturing. Many of them needed antibiotics prescribed.
In terms of the facility, and I think you've testified that it was a level 1 trauma center?
Yes.
Did the fact that it was a level 1 trauma center have any effect on the number of dog bite wounds you would see?
I don't know the exact effect, but we did get referrals in.
And does the fact that it was a level trauma 1 center mean your estimate was conservative or liberal?
Oh, my estimate was conservative.
Doesn't she sound like she's remembering what she's supposed to say there? Oh, yeah, this is a conservative estimate. I can't remember if this is the 40 dog bites or the 1,000 that she's going to say she saw. She moves from place to place. She was a police officer in Massachusetts for a while.
Meaning conservative, you say 500, but describe what you mean by conservative.
Conservative
What
means...
number does it go down?
Oh, I probably saw a lot more than 500.
Does that estimate include the number of dog-inflicted wounds that you supervised?
No.
So in addition to the 500 plus, you also supervised. Describe what the nature of the supervision was with respect to dog-inflicted wounds.
Well, as an attending physician at a university medical center, of course, I supervised interns, other residents, medical students, PAs, and nurse practitioners. And so frequently had, 3 to 5 people working with me that I had to supervise. So I would see I saw any case that they saw. Any patient that they saw, I would supervise. And when there were wounds, I would look at the wounds personally myself.
How many trainees did you typically supervise per shift?
Typically 3 to 5.
So in addition to the 500 plus, you were supervising 3 to 5 trainees per shift who also were treating dog-inflicted wounds?
Yes.
And can you give an approximate number of dog-inflicted wounds, just approximate, that those trainees would be experiencing in their role?
It's so hard to give an estimate. But with all those trainees and all those weeks and years.
Well, you just gave an estimate. She's going to stick with 500. 500 that she supervised. Hold on one second. 500 that she saw herself. That's the expertise. That's the expertise she's going to give, and that's the estimate she came up with. 1,000 altogether. Does that seem extreme? I just had my face ripped open by a dog when I was 4 years old. And my mother rushed me to the hospital. They wouldn't take me. I had to go to a plastic surgeon. So this was on my face, which they usually are on the face or neck. And they're usually little kids, not adults.
I would say at least another 500.
Have you?
So there we are, 500 and 500. But just meeting people over the years, I've just met a few people over the years that have said, I got a serious dog bite that needed this kind of care. So 1,000 people, really? It seems inflated to me.
Ever participated, now we're going to switch gears to when you described you were a forensic pathologist in OR. Did you ever have experience with an autopsy which regarded a canine attack?
Yes, unfortunately.
When?
It was in 1995.
And where?
It was in Los Angeles.
And where specifically, which department in Los Angeles?
Oh, when I was at the coroner's office, I was assigned an autopsy.
So this was at the medical examiner's office?
That's correct, medical examiner now.
And what was the subject of the autopsy? Who was the subject?
It was a young boy. I don't remember the exact age. And he was killed by 3 dogs when he entered into a fenced area.
Were they?
Good afternoon, Dr. Russell.
Good afternoon.
My name's Hank Brennan.
So she said some didn't have the language. She had to suss out what animal, what happened to them, and come to the conclusion of a dog bite. Keep that in mind. Here's Hank Brennan. But before we go into that, let's let's just look at your comments and we'll come right back to this.
We got your comments. You had something to say. You were insightful. Oh, so clever. So Roberta's going to read your comments. Hey, Roberta, read those comments.
Okay, Redhead says reports of only about 20 free Karen readers outside the court at this hearing. Rest went down to cheer on Luigi Mangione. FLM. Oh, F my life. I think that's what you mean, FLM. I don't know. Maybe you mean something else. Sleazy Move says, yeah, the judge was annoying the S out of me. I've seen many attorneys in many trials interrupt a witness who isn't answering the question. If you can't interrupt a witness, then they can go on and on about BS and waste the jury's time. I suppose objecting is also wrong since it's interrupting a witness as well. So it's hilarious when I see free Karen readers bang on about a biased judge when she seems intimidated by Karen Reed's team and treats the prosecution like garbage. She treated Adam Lally like garbage for sure. But this was really self-indulgent, ridiculously overlong for no reason. I mean, I give you a little flavor of it, but I mean, that went on like that. Feeding Marie Russell. So Robert Alessi, Karen Reed's new pro bono judge, feeding the expert expert witness in dog bites, Dr. Marie Russell, the information. And many times Judge Cannoni had to interrupt and said, like, you can't testify, Robert Alessi. You're not testifying. Stop feeding your information, i.e., that's what she meant. You can't do that on direct. Can't ask those leading questions. But Alessi has gotten himself involved very much, seems very much like Dr. Marie Russell. Did I call her Mitchell? Russell. And I don't know, he really wanted to show off and just sort of wear down the court just by the length of the hearing. So, well, she testified for 5.5 hours. She has to be qualified if she can sit up on the stand for that long and just recite all her qualifications and accomplishments. She has to be qualified just by bringing out slowly every single one and having your own opine on things. But Brennan it really felt like a job interview in some ways, where you finesse your qualifications to tailor them to the job that you're looking for. Richard W. 3052 says, she literally says, meaning Marie Russell says, she left open the possibility of another animal causing the marks. That means she is not certain it is a dog. It is such a joke to continue this hearing after she already disqualified her own assessment of the dog bites. So I'm not sure she is coming in. She may come in. Seems like Judge Cannoni. I'm not sure after Brennan's cross if it continues down the brutal way it was going on Thursday. I doubt she's going to be a witness, but maybe. But the Commonwealth has its own dog bite expert coming up, Jim Crosby. We're going to talk about him in a bit, with a lot, way more qualified than Marie Russell. So here's Hank Brennan, appears right at the end of the day. And this is the beginning of his cross.
And had the pleasure of meeting before.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brennan.
I'm going to ask you a few questions if that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. You shared with us that you have an extensive history of experience in the emergency room.
Yes.
And in the emergency room, you see all types of injuries, don't you?
Yes.
You see physical injuries, yes?
Yes.
Emotional injuries?
Yes.
People who overdose, perhaps they're drunk on drugs?
Yes.
Alcohol?
Yes.
So you cover a wide array of different types of treatments.
Yes.
Now, you must have seen a number of broken bones when you were in the emergency room caring for different patients, correct?
Thousands.
Arms, legs, toes?
Yes.
In light of your extensive experience in the emergency room, and looking at all of these broken bones, that doesn't make you an expert in orthopedics, does it?
Emergency orthopedics, yes.
Oh. Have you ever been qualified as an expert in orthopedics?
No, I've never.
Isn't orthopedics a specialty in medicine where there is specific training?
See, but if Dr. Marie Russell considers herself an expert, she's an expert. She doesn't need to get qualified. He honed in on her narcissism so well. Oh, and he'll use this language. So you consider yourself to be an expert in, you know, watch his language in the next couple of questions. It gets good.
Yes.
And people who become orthopedics or orthopedic surgeons, they go through rigorous education specifically to be an orthopedic, right?
Well, orthopedics involves more than just setting fractures or diagnosing fractures. Orthopedics involves things like bone tumors, bone cancers, a lot of other parts of orthopedics, not just trauma. I am an expert in emergency orthopedics, I believe.
So you have decided that you are an expert in orthopedics?
Emergency orthopedics.
You've decided you're an expert. You've decided. You've decided. I've decided I'm an expert in dog bites, everyone. I've decided. These lawyers are such wordsmiths.
Emergency orthopedics, is that a specialty that you get a fellowship in, or somehow you are deemed an expert in any way?
It's not a specialty that has a fellowship that I'm aware of.
I see. So you are proclaiming that you yourself think that you're an emergency room orthopedic.
You're proclaiming. I'm proclaiming I'm an expert in cats. I have two. I'm an expert, and I will testify as a cat expert. Anyone? Maybe I can get the big bucks for that. I'm proclaiming I'm an expert, and I've decided I'm an expert. So I am an expert. I'm proclaiming it right here, everybody. Feline expert, Roberta Glass. And I charge $500, $600 an hour, no less, for my expertise.
I have expertise in emergency orthopedics, yes.
Are you an expert in orthopedics?
The whole field of orthopedics, no.
And you don't have any specialized degrees in orthopedics, do you?
No.
I put in thousands of feline hours since I was a child, since my first cat. I'm calling myself an expert, guys.
You would agree that somebody who's gone through the rigorous requirements of being an orthopedic and qualified, they'd have much more experience in that than you. True?
In general orthopedics, yes. I have a lot of experience in orthopedic trauma related to emergencies.
Have you ever been in any court where you've...
Right. So other people may have experience and knowledge in, say, feline veterinary care, but they don't have the day-to-day contact that I have with cats. You know what I'm saying, guys? I think I've given myself an expertise here, and I think I could charge the big bucks. They haven't put in the time, the petting time, the playing time, the feeding time, the observation that I have. They're too busy doing vet work.
Have you been qualified as an expert in orthopedics?
It was never an issue.
But I'm asking you, have you ever been in any court, state, federal, this country, any other country, where you've been qualified as an expert in orthopedics?
No.
Has anybody other than yourself ordained you as an expert in orthopedics?
I haven't ordained myself as an expert in orthopedics. I have a lot of knowledge and expertise in emergency orthopedics.
Has any authority
She's ordained herself an expert in orthopedics, everyone. I've ordained myself an expert in cats.
ever recognized you and qualified you as an expert in orthopedics?
No.
Just you.
I haven't declared myself.
King of Kings, a vet is more credible to you than the hours of kitty time I put in? I'm shocked. I'm shocked that you would say that.
Myself an expert in orthopedics. I have expertise.
You've seen a lot of car accidents, you shared with us.
Yes.
As a police officer.
Yes.
In the emergency room.
Yes.
Perhaps when you were at the ME's office, you saw the consequence of car accidents.
I did, yes.
Are you an expert in accident reconstruction?
Reconstruction? No.
And when you see the different people that come in with overdoses, whether it's alcohol or drugs, you treat them, don't you?
Yes.
But you're not an expert toxicologist, are you?
I'm not a toxicologist, no. But toxicology is a part of emergency medicine. So
this woman's an expert, master of none, everything. King of Kids says, not you, her. A vet would be more qualified than her. True. I agree. Great point. I thought you were going against my newly ordained kitty, self-proclaimed and ordained kitty credentials.
We have training in orthopedic in toxicology, but no, I am not an expert in toxicology.
I'm not suggesting you're unfamiliar with it or you haven't had experience or some training. I'm asking you if you think you're an expert.
In toxicology?
Yes.
No.
And you've shared with us that you agree you don't have any expertise in DNA.
That's correct.
In fact, you know very little about DNA, don't you?
I would say that's pretty reasonable, yes.
That's what you said.
Yes.
Oh. You mentioned that you are generalizing or approximating the number of dog bite cases you've attended.
So she says that she's not an expert in DNA because, of course, there's no dog DNA found on John O'Keefe. And, of course, if you know you live with dogs or cats, dog hair is everywhere. So she's saying that, no dog DNA or dog hair was found in John O'Keefe's clothing. So it's really unlikely, this dog story. Karen Reed says her mother invented it. I don't know where it came from. It's ridiculous. I would think it came from Karen Reed's head like the rest of her defense, if I had to guess.
In the emergency room relative to civilian dogs or domestic dogs, is that right?
Yes.
And you've suggested that you probably treated about one dog a week over a period of 27 years, yes?
Yes.
Which is 1,000 weeks in your estimation.
Yes.
You worked for some of the most busiest ERs. Was there a lot of patients every day that you treated?
Yes.
On average, how many patients would you treat in the ER over those 27 years on a daily basis?
Daily, I would think about 30.
So if you're treating 30 patients a day over a course of a week, and you consider that in the context of 1,000 weeks, the amount of dog bite cases that you treated in the ER is about half of 1%. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
No, you lost me on that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, if you had one dog bite case a week, and say you had 20 cases a day, 100 a week, that would be 1% of your cases.
Oh, it could, yes, yes, but it's the number of cases, not the percentage that was asked of me.
I'm just asking you a question.
Okay.
Right. So he's saying that anybody good with math If you're seeing 30 patients a day, and I don't know how many years did she work in the ER? I think he's calling BS. I don't know if he's calling BS on the number of patients. He's saying it's 1% of her, probably 1% of the patients she saw were for dog bites. But 1,000 patients? 1,000? I find that hard to believe.
I just want to clarify that.
And so you said how many? 25, 30 a day?
Patients, yes.
So that's less than 1% of the cases that you treated in the ER relative to dog bites.
Okay, that's reasonable, and that's average, actually.
Now, when you treated cases of dog bites in the ER, you said that you would sometimes have the reporter, the person injured or somebody with them, tell you it was a dog bite.
Yes.
Yeah? And sometimes you had communication difficulties, or there was a reason why they couldn't share it with you.
Yes.
And then you suggested that's how you came to this pattern recognition skill, is that you would have to determine the injury with no help from the reporter.
I was always interested in dog bites, and yes, there were a few occasions when I had to use those skills in order to determine what kind of an animal it was.
Let's talk about those few.
So here he's calling BS on her story that people couldn't tell her, and she had to count on her pattern recognition to determine what kind of animal it was that this person was bitten by. Just like John O'Keefe, she had to do from the pictures. The fact that she didn't examine John O'Keefe herself is a big negative here.
Occasions. Why don't you share with us a story where you met a patient, if you can recall, where you had no idea what the injury may have been because there was no ability to communicate, and tell us about how you determined it was a dog bite.
Well, thinking about a specific case, I can think of cases where I determined it wasn't a dog bite, and you know, it was something else based on the pattern of the bite. And am I not answering your question?
I'm not looking for cases where you couldn't determine if a dog bite. I want you to share some of this wealth of experience you have in dog bites.
Hank Brennan walks away from the mic, and I tried to lift it up his audio as much as I could, but it really gets tough. My apologies at some parts.
Share with us, if you will, one of the cases where there was no information that it was a dog bite for whatever reason, and then you, based on your pattern recognition skills, determined it was a dog bite. I want you to walk through an actual case that you can recall that you had with this scenario you presented.
You know, I can't give you a specific case because, again, in the overall scheme of emergency medicine and the frequency that dog bites are to other cases, it's just not a case.
She can't remember one specific case that she treated where she had to suss out that it was a dog bite. Everybody hear that? This is a BS narrative, I think, this is my opinion, that Alessi gave her. This is all new. This is really not in the first testimony. And I won't torture you with her first testimony and trial, but it's quite new.
Case that I would remember, that kind of the specifics of the case.
It's interesting in supporting your vast experience you shared with us, sides of these past experiences, and presenting yourself as an expert in pattern recognition. And it's interesting that when I'm asking for the details that support this general point, you can't remember.
Objection, Your Honor. Argument.
Yeah, so, counsel,
Yeah.
that's okay. In Massachusetts, typically we don't give the reason for objections.
Alessi practices in New York City. He's saying that's argumentative. But he's saying it's interesting that you fancy yourself a pattern recognition expert and you can't remember one time where you used this great technique of pattern recognition. That's not the phrase not used by any other dog bite expert. Can't remember one time when she had to, just a patient came in, couldn't communicate. Either it was a language barrier, she says in her direct, So people generally, witnesses, expert witnesses or otherwise, come across really well in their direct. And it takes, whether they can withstand a very thorough cross-examination really determines their veracity of what they're saying. So everyone looks good in direct, generally. That's why cross-examination is sometimes called the engine of truth.
From the floor. Your objection sustained. No commentary, Mr. Brennan.
You shared with the court that you wrote a few articles that had to do with dog bites.
Co-authored, yes.
Can I ask you some questions about those?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, the first one I want to talk about is law enforcement canine dog bites. Do you remember that article?
Yes.
And that had to do with what you refer to as law enforcement dogs or canines.
Yes.
In that article, you talk specifically about a technique that you believe law enforcement or canine dogs utilize, which is bite and hold.
Yes.
And what you have suggested is that the bite and hold technique is different than typically a domestic dog or a civilian dog.
Yes.
Because it's a trained learning for the dog, correct?
Yes.
There are certain injuries you would expect from a canine dog using a bite and hold technique.
Yes.
When you wrote this or co-authored this article, you didn't actually sit down with people who had wounds and compare the wounds to the dog that caused them, did you?
To the actual dog?
Yes.
I didn't, but I didn't.
Just want to know if you did.
No.
Oh. And when you looked at these different cases, there was 700 cases. This was what you called or the authors called a retrospective analysis?
Correct.
That means you were looking back at old files.
Yes, but I participated in some of those files. We were just looking back at the data from those files.
Mm-hmm.
I participated in the care of some of those patients.
I understand.
Okay.
And so when you went through the files, you didn't have the opportunity then to follow up and speak to any of the participants or the injured victims, did you?
I spoke to many of the victims while I was treating them.
When you decided to write this article, did you go back and speak to anybody?
No.
There's no mention in this article about pattern recognition in any way. That's not what this article was about, was it?
No, that's not what the article's about.
It's about something entirely different than what you've suggested today is your pattern recognition skills. Yes?
That's correct. I recognized the patterns because I saw the wounds and I saw the injuries and I saw them over and over and over again. And I recognized those patterns throughout my career. And so it's hard to unrecognize something.
I'm trying to ask you about the significance of your study because this is actually something that you published.
Yes.
And I'm trying to determine, or I want you to be able to discuss the relevancy of this article to what you're testifying today. So the question, the really narrow question I have.
Brennan has done his homework. He's read her studies. And I think the difference between her testimony in the first trial, the language in her report, she wrote no report, the first trial, the difference between the language in her report and her studies all gives him the idea that Robert Alessi, the pro bono lawyer for Karen Reed, is behind her report. So why is Alessi, someone asked why Alessi is pro bono? Well, he's pro bono because I would think Karen Reed is frugal. The word she uses in regards to John O'Keefe, I think, is really about herself. And she's boo-hooing all over the place that she's $5 million in debt. I don't believe it. I think she's cleaning up with these fundraisers, etc. All of it was supposed to go to her lawyers. She certainly doesn't look like she's hurting any for money. So he wants to get himself attached with a high-profile trial, perhaps get her civil case, represent her in the civil case, and perhaps get some new clients from people who see him on TV. That's the name of the game. Hey, Tammy, how's Gizmo? This is a fellow cat expert, self-ordained cat expert. Hey, RG. This is to fund your feline university to add more credibility as an expert in kitties. Thank you, Tammy. We can do it together. We can start the university together. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
In the study, it had nothing to do with trying to engage in pattern recognition.
The purpose of the study was not to teach people pattern recognition. It was to alert them to the dangers of this different type of dog bite so that they weren't undertreating them. But in the process of seeing all those patients, I developed the pattern recognition.
Okay. And so there was another article, Managing Law Enforcement Canine Dog Bites in the Emergency Department.
Yes.
Now that only comprised of 4 cases, yes?
It was a case description.
Of 4 cases?
Yes.
And do you know most studies usually include over 30 cases?
It's not a study.
I see. You reviewed types of injuries relative to civilian or domestic dogs, or just canine?
Those were canine dogs.
And again, your position is that the injuries by canine dogs, law enforcement dogs, are different in kind than domestic or civilian dogs.
In general, when they bite and hold, those injuries are different. Sometimes they don't get a complete bite.
And so this article didn't deal with civilian or domestic dogs. It dealt with only canine dogs.
That's correct.
Exclusively on the idea or the perspective of bite and hold injuries.
It was on the perspective of you need to learn how to treat these.
Bite and hold injuries.
These dog bite injuries.
Bite and hold.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Now, again, in this article, there was no
bite and hold injuries, which I don't think anyone is claiming. John O'Keefe's clearly his wound from the side of Karen Reed's car is a bite and hold injury. She's like, it's a dog bite injury. It qualifies. No, I'm talking about bite and hold injuries. That's your expertise or that's what you're saying. These articles are about bite and hold by canine dogs, police dogs. Ah, she's like dog bites. They're dog bites. They're all dog bites.
No effort to identify wounds or use pattern analysis. It was the treatment of bite and hold injuries from canines.
That's correct.
Law enforcement canines. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then you also shared with us, in addition to these 2 articles on law enforcement dogs and bite and hold injuries, that you did some revising, editing of a book for a Dr. Is it Vati?
I'm sorry, say again?
You said that you revised or edited a book of a
Dr.
friend.
Vale.
Dr. Vale, I'm sorry, Dr. Vale. And when you were asked about what actually you recall about the topics, you don't really remember the topics of that book, you just remembered you edited it?
No, I remember the topics of the book.
In the topics of the book, it was dealing with human teeth, wasn't it?
Yes, but in the article itself, if you read it, there's mention about dog dentition.
There's a mention of it.
Yes.
Tell us what that mention was.
Well, the mention is that the dog dentition looks different and dog bites look different because of the triangular shape of the dog's mouth versus a rounded shape of the human's mouth.
Well, when they talk about the shape of a dog's mouth, it's not really triangular. It's like an hourglass.
Well, but that was the quote. Those were the words that were used in the article, and it's relative triangular shape. It's as opposed to a round shape of a human.
Well, in most studies, professional studies by experts, isn't it routinely referred to as an hourglass shape?
I haven't seen that at all.
Well, have you read books on dog bites?
I've read articles on dog bites.
You've read books on dog bites?
No.
And we know she's a book lover. She prefers to read true crime books and insert herself on high-profile trials, true crime trials. This woman is like a Karen Reed fan. She's inserted herself. Well, I've seen dog bites in emergency rooms. I've written 2 papers on police dog bites, the bite and hold, nothing to do with anything. In this case, I'll insert myself. This the phone expert was terrible. They had to rewrite the whole program for his misinterpretation of the data. And then they had Lucky Loughran, who was completely rehearsed by the defense, spitting out exactly what they want to say with his bad eyesight. So they have like a blind plow driver, this woman, and a phone expert who they had to rewrite, phone data expert who they had to rewrite the program that he's analyzing because he misinterpreted the data on the house long to die in the cold data. Terrific. I mean, I called them her garbage defense witnesses, and I stick by that analysis.
I have read articles on dog bites.
Have you ever read this book? Do you recognize this as an authority?
No.
No?
So for the record, you need to say what you just showed the
I'm
witness.
showing Dr. Russell a book called Dog Bites, a Multidisciplinary Perspective, edited by Daniel S. Mills.
Is that it? I'm sorry. May I see it?
If the court would let me, of course. May I approach?
Yes.
So this is the book that he's going to show her. Dog Bites, a Multidisciplinary Perspective by Daniel S. Mills and Carrie Weisgarth. And I just want to show you this before she says that they don't have any credentials. This is something that Grant Smith Ellis picked out of this testimony, this cross, that I thought was interesting. Do I have it up? Hold on one second. Let me pull it up. Boo doo doo doo. My apologies. I thought I had this up and ready. But he basically just says they are credentialed. They have lots of credentials, these writers in this dog. On this dog bite expert, she says, oh no, they don't have any credentials either. Like, who are they to write that book that I wouldn't read because I only write articles about I only read articles and write articles about dog bites. I wouldn't read a book, say, about my intense interest in dog bites. Here it is. Hold on one sec. Thanks for your patience. So it says the authors of the book on dog bites presented on cross-examination during Thursday's pre-Karen Reed trial expert witness motion hearing do indeed have multiple advanced degrees. So you can see Professor Carrie Weisgarth and Daniel Mills both have advanced degrees. The link to that tweet is in the description of the episode if you want to take a closer look. So back to Dr. Marie Russell getting owned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill D, thanks for your great continuing coverage. Roberta, you're welcome, Jill D. And thanks, mods. Well, thank you. Thank you, Maestro. It's my incredibly hardworking mod. I appreciate it.
It doesn't mention if any of these people have degrees of any.
Sorry, Your Honor, I don't believe a question's pending.
Sorry, Mr. Alessi, I couldn't hear you.
Thank you. I don't believe a question
I'm
is
sorry.
pending for the witness.
Okay, are you moving to strike that?
Yes, I am.
All right, I'll strike that. So, doctor, I know it's been a long day. Wait for a question, please, okay?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You done reviewing the book?
Yes.
You've, through your testimony, attempted to or suggested there's a distinction between canine law enforcement wounds and that of domestic.
Yes.
But domestic dogs can cut the skin,
Correct.
cause serious injury,
Yes,
deep wounds.
they can.
It's not just that domestic dogs just nip around the corners. They can bite.
They can.
They can attack.
Yes.
They can kill.
Yes.
You've seen it firsthand.
Yes. Oh, I didn't witness the attack, no.
Do you doubt that it was a canine attack?
No, I didn't witness the attack myself.
I understand.
Firsthand is what you said.
Okay. You made a firsthand observation of a dog bite in the 1970s when you were at...
But that's an interesting little back and forth there. You've seen it firsthand that dogs can kill. Well, I didn't see the dog attack firsthand. But that's what you're saying your expertise is in your ability to suss out what kind of animal attacked and what caused the fatality in the coroner's office and in the ER. I mean, what are you talking about, lady? You didn't witness the attack. You said your specialty was pattern recognition.
A training?
Yes.
And one of the participants was bit?
Yes.
Now, you said you didn't remember the wound. Do you have any memory of looking at what happened after a dog actually bit somebody firsthand?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'm going to allow its cross-examination on our test, based on our testimony.
Say again? Any question?
Should I repeat, Doctor?
Yes, please.
Do you have any memory of what you saw of when a dog actually bit somebody, your firsthand observation?
From 50 years ago? No.
Right. When people came in the emergency room, you didn't actually see the bites or how the mechanics of it happening. You're treating it after they come and ask you for aid.
That's correct.
Did you ever, in any of those emergency room experiences, go and see the dog?
No.
Did you ever have any other information about the dog, photographs, pictures, anything like that?
Well, I did have other information about the dog.
Oh, give me an example. Tell me.
Well, we had to fill out a dog bite report after a dog bite's requirement in Los Angeles County. So, although most doctors don't have the time to do it, I tried to comply with that.
Yeah, I like to comply. I like to fill out the dog report, although other doctors wouldn't. I went the extra mile. I heard about Chloe from Aiden. I had all the information I needed with John O'Keefe. What are you talking about, Brennan? This really made me fall in love with Brennan. This cross was great.
So I would question the victim, try to find out the address of the dog if they knew it. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But I tried to get as much information as I could.
Did you ever get any photographs?
No.
So it was just reporter information from the person who's coming for treatment or somebody that was assisting them?
Yes.
Okay. You provided a CV in this case, didn't you?
Yes.
In your CV, you list out some of your pertinent history and experience?
Yes.
Subsequent to your CV, you wrote a report and you signed it on the 9th of December, 2024?
Yes.
And it was provided to the Commonwealth, on December 10th, 2024, 2 days ago?
Yes.
There are a number of things that you offer in that report regarding your suggested experience that are just not in your CV. Isn't that fair to say?
That could be, yes. Of course, you can't put everything in the CV.
Well, you didn't say anything really about dog bite experience in your CV other than your 2 articles, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And you didn't mention anything about this specialized training or expertise?
Right. Wait till you see Crosby's, just a little of what's on his CV, who's the Commonwealth's dog bite expert. He's testified in case after case after case, wrote a whole thesis about it. We'll look at that in a minute. but she just didn't mention it besides her 2 articles. But she's a dog bite expert. She's self-ordained dog bite expert.
In pattern recognition analysis. You didn't mention anything about that in your CV, did you?
Can't mention everything.
I didn't ask if you could mention anything. I'm asking if you mentioned that.
Well, it says brief CV on the top.
Okay. I'll ask you again.
Okay.
Did you mention anything in your CV about pattern recognition analysis in your described expertise in that?
No.
In your report, and let me ask you before we get to your report, you testified at a voir dire in this case?
Yes.
About a year ago?
Less than that.
And you then testified at trial?
Yes.
Okay. When you testified in the voir dire and trial, and in your CV, you don't mention the scores of peer review articles on dog bites that you studied, do you?
Ask that question.
I'm sorry. When you testified 2 times before,
yes,
did you talk about the scores, as you describe it, of peer review articles that you've studied on dog bites?
On the numbers of peer? No, I didn't mention that. That's correct.
Okay, and that's not mentioned in your CV either.
You don't usually mention it in your CV about the articles you read.
But I'm asking if you did.
Oh, no, I wouldn't mention that in my CV.
Okay, so let's talk about it now since you didn't mention it. You read scores of peer-reviewed articles on dog bites.
Throughout my career, yes.
Let's talk about the peer-reviewed articles that you've studied on pattern recognition analysis of dog bites. Could you please give me a list of those peer-reviewed articles that you studied?
I don't think there are any.
She doesn't think there are any peer-reviewed articles that she studied for this because she's such a maverick that she creates her own technique, or what is she talking about here? She just said she's read hundreds of peer-reviewed articles. Has anybody else checked out the grievance studies? That hoax that these academics did on academia and got these ridiculous papers accepted into academic journals. For one was a feminist rewriting of Mein Kampf, and another was, what was it? Oh, essay culture in dog parks. And they were concerned that the way that the study was done was not respectful to the dogs. Check it out if you haven't. There's a lot of videos on it on YouTube, but it definitely lowers your feeling about academia after the grievance studies. What's getting published as these peer-reviewed journals.
Well, there are some mentions of pattern recognition in some articles. However, I don't think there's a dedicated article on pattern recognition of dog bites.
You said in your report that you reviewed scores of peer-reviewed articles on dog bites.
Dog bites, yes.
Okay, so those didn't really include pattern recognition as you've described your expertise today.
Some of them did, some of them didn't, but that might not have been the major focus of the article.
Which ones did? Can you reference us the ones that you've read and relied upon, in your opinion today, that have to do with pattern recognition analysis?
May I look at my report or my CV?
Sure.
Of course.
Sure. Go ahead and take your time, Doc.
Thank you. Okay, there is, and they might not have used the term pattern recognition, but that's what they're talking about in these articles.
Okay.
There is a article on, by D. Munich. It's actually listed in my report under literature.
Okay, I see it.
It's the third one. Yes.
And that deals with pattern recognition analysis?
It's part of the article. There was a lot more in the article than just pattern recognition. And again, they might not have used that specific term pattern, but it's what the subject was discussed in the middle of the article, yes.
What was discussed in this article that you relied upon?
Oh, I relied on the descriptions of wounds. I relied on a lot of this article.
Well, Share with us in detail. Could you tell us what you relied on in that article as part of your opinion?
There was a description. There was an area that described wounds and fatal wounds in dog bites, and how to approach them. You know, how to investigate them. There was an area that described what some of these wounds looked like. And there was actually an area that I believe.
This would be actually a good time to bring up Jim Crosby, the Commonwealth's expert, and how he says you should investigate dog bites. Okay. And it is not from pattern recognition. So this is from his article, James Crosby Bite Investigation Protocol Cache, Immediate Action for First Responders, Secure the Scene from Contamination, Identify and Secure Potential Witnesses, Exclude media from filming victim or actual scene till after processing, observe animal's demeanor while handling tasks, take notes, physical capture the animal, make sure you artfully glove before you touch the animal. If the animal vomited, basically get DNA. If the animal's deceased, I mean, just none of these initial response, I mean, just none of these have to do with breed specific anyway, none of these have to do with pattern recognition from a picture, because it goes so much beyond that. And that's the essence of everything he has to say about animals, that you cannot tell from a picture. Totally. You have to rely on a lot of other things.
This article that said that if you have this plus this plus this, that it is pathognomonic for a dog bite. Now, it was, I believe that was the article that said that. One of these articles did, but anyways, so yeah, so I think maybe you might want to look at them.
Oh, I did.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking you.
Okay.
That's why I'm confused about which one you're talking about.
There was not a recipe book that said, okay, you know, this is the pattern.
He's like, I did read those articles and nowhere did I find the information that you're saying is in them. This would not be a teacher. Brendan would not be a teacher you would want to lie to about reading the book for the book report or just reading the cliff notes. He would catch you every time. I wonder if he has children. They come home late. They've lied to him. I think he would suss out a lie in a second. Not a person you want to lie to, Hank Brennan. Oh, I did read those articles. He does his homework. And he is really taking aim at her narcissism, her want to get involved in a high-profile trial. Hasn't really touched on her greed yet, but I'm sure that that'll come. How much she's getting paid, I'm sure we'll hear about that at trial.
Of a dog bite. It might, you know, they might not get a lot of readers for that, but this was a forensic approach as to how to identify fatal dog attacks.
So from your resume, Doctor, could you tell me which article you're talking about?
I'm talking about the third one down.
What's the title?
The title of the article is Forensic Approach of Fatal Dog Attacks, a Case Report and Literature Review.
Okay.
Fatal dog attacks.
So Judge Canoni wants to know so she can base her decision on reading these articles too. So she will probably take a look at that article and look at Russell's report and see if it was any of that information could be used, or she's just making things up. It sounds like she's just making things up. Pattern recognition.
Oftentimes, involve vulnerable areas like the neck,
Absolutely.
abdomen?
Neck, face, head, yes.
That's-
Sometimes the abdomen, yes.
Okay. No cases cited in there that deal with wounds on an arm.
Because it's a fatal.
Right.
Right. But that doesn't mean that there weren't wounds on the arm. It's that the fatal wounds, like in the case I autopsied, the fatal wounds generally were in the areas that had organs that could be damaged, like or major vessels like a carotid artery, neck. But there could be a lot of other wounds. For instance, in my case, there was probably about 60 wounds.
I understand.
Okay, but some of, you're not going to talk about every single one of them because they're not worthy of describing.
Okay. You said that you attended multiple seminars, talks, and lectures regarding wound identification.
Yes.
Okay. When did you attend seminars on wound identification?
Intermittently throughout my career. I can't give you any dates.
Okay. Were any of those wound identifications dog bite wound identification seminars?
No, they were general wound identifications, and they may mention bites.
Okay. Was there any of these seminars that focused on dog bite wounds?
That focused on dog bite wounds?
Yeah.
No.
How about the talks you went to? Any of the talks focus on dog bite wounds?
There were several talks that focused on bite wounds.
I'm going to ask again. Were there any talks that focused on dog bite wounds?
No.
Okay. Lectures. You've cited that you've attended lectures as part of this experience. Can you recall specific lectures that focused on dog bite wounds?
Not entire lectures. There were lectures in emergency department, training sessions, but dog bites were usually mixed in with other kind of animal bites, and discussion would occur because it's not you have to use up an hour usually when you go to one of these lectures, and there were other animals to talk about besides dogs.
In these lectures that you went to that didn't focus primarily on dog bite wounds, did they talk about pattern recognition analysis of dog bite wounds?
Generally not the emergency medicine ones, because that's actually not really a major focus. The focus in emergency medicine is treatment. I'm a bit unusual because I have this interest that I've had for many years.
So it's fair to say none of the multiple seminars, talks, lectures that
Just like I've had this interest in cats for since early childhood. I've had this interest in cats. That qualifies me as an expert. But she's gone to lectures, but none about dog bites. But she's gone to lectures about identifying wounds that they might mention dog bites. I would love for him to have asked what lecture were dog bites even mentioned. She can remember one that she went to. I just think all this is just nonsense. Totally, she's padded her resume with the help of Alessi.
that you attended had any focus on pattern recognition analysis of dog bite wounds?
None of them had any focus. That's correct.
You've shared with us your experience. You've agreed that you are not an accident reconstruction expert, correct?
Correct.
Are you an expert on self-defense?
No.
So when you give opinions about self-defense, I know you have experience and you have observations of what you believe a defense is, but do you have any actual experience as a self-defense expert?
No.
Do you have any specialized training, certificates, degrees in self-defense?
No.
Self-defense wounds?
No.
When you went to these lectures, talks, seminars, group meetings, do you have any memory of particular trainings that you had on self-defense wounds?
You mean defense wounds?
Sure, defense wounds.
Yes, I do. I have particular memories of those types of lectures.
Okay.
In topic. Oh, yes, I do.
Well, let's talk about a few of them. What was one of the lectures that you went to that was directed at defense wounds?
Well, not only did I go to some of these lectures, but I gave some of these lectures.
Okay.
And they were child abuse, elder abuse, domestic violence lectures. And in the coroner's office, again, mechanism of injury is stressed. And there's a whole training program.
You have no degree in biomechanics?
No.
Okay. And so when I asked you about one of the trainings on defense wounds, I want you to just give us a little detail from your memory about the training. Share with us how you've come to this knowledge on defense wounds.
Again, okay. So in the clinical setting, I was taught many times, and then I subsequently taught students about how victims of a violent act will instinctively bring up their arms to protect themselves from whatever is being inflicted, whether it be knife wounds or blunt wounds from an object, whatever is being inflicted on them, they will tend without.
So is she saying that the dog went for John O'Keefe's face and he put up his arm? Wasn't it more likely that he was holding a glass and he got an unusual wound from the side of her car? I mean, the car marks matched. I mean, the wounds matched the grading on her car almost exactly. I mean, is that what she's saying? I thought the dog just kind of jumped up and scratched and bit at the arm. Was this stupid defense theory here. Isn't it interesting though that she has no memory of? If you ask me, I can remember every lecture I've gone to practically, and what it was about, if it was memorable, and if it was my intense interest, and who gave it, and what they were talking about, and where I learned something. She has no memory of any specific time she was taught about defensive wounds or one of her lectures. She's a BSer.
Out thinking to try to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. And I also think it's common sense, by the way.
So on the outside of the arm, if there's marks, that could be a defensive wound?
Yes.
Could it be a different type of wound, not a defensive wound, but a wound where somebody punches or hits and it hits a metal or a stationary or a fixed object?
Could those kind of wounds
end
up there? Oh, yes.
Okay. So just because there is a wound on the posterior side of the forearm, that does not make it a defensive wound, does it?
Not absolutely.
Well,
in context, though.
Right. In context. So you need to know more information.
Correct.
So perhaps if you saw how that happened, that would provide you more information.
That would be one way.
But if you saw nothing and have really no idea how it happened, it doesn't give you a lot of context of the wound other than it's a wound on the posterior side of an arm.
Well, it does in the sense that it's a common way that people protect themselves.
Mm-hmm. Can someone incur wounds to the forearm, posterior side of the forearm, if they fall to the ground and fall backwards?
They could, but they wouldn't look like that.
Well,
that series. Okay.
Have you studied a collection of wounds when people fell backwards onto the ground?
I've seen hundreds of people that have fallen backwards or frontwards and every which way.
Wouldn't you want to have an idea what they fell on or into before you make a conclusion that it would not have looked like the picture that we've looked at, Exhibit 5?
I've seen, as I said, hundreds, and there has never been a pattern like that ever that I've seen.
Well, when someone hits a moving or a floating object, patterns are dynamic. They change all the time, don't they?
They do during the hitting process. Yes, during that process.
Okay. You talked about your specialized training. You said you had a program in motor vehicle accidents.
Yes.
And I think when you testified before, Attorney Lally had asked you whether or not your training was, I think he used the word rudimentary, and you agreed?
Yes, I believe it was only a one-week course or something thereabouts.
When you're identifying a wound at the hospital, is it important to know, you said it's important to know the animal because that dictates the treatment.
It may dictate the treatment.
What if you can't identify the animal?
Then then you have to go on clinical judgment, and sometimes we even have to call up the Board of Health. But you go on clinical judgment to determine, well, what was the worst possibility? That's the way I approach movement. What is the worst? Could it have been a rabid animal, an animal with rabies? Or was it an animal that doesn't carry rabies? And then based by treatment on that, sometimes you have to treat broadly, and sometimes you have to, treat people for conditions, even if you don't know 100% that they exist.
Are there times when you saw injuries that you just didn't know how they happened?
Yes.
Many times. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And many times you thought what you saw were bites, but you couldn't articulate the animal, right?
That happens sometimes.
Okay. Suffice to say, you have never, ever been qualified in a federal court to testify as a dog bite expert, have you?
No.
And other than this trial a year ago, have you ever been qualified to testify in any state court in the entire country as a dog bite expert?
No, the issue never came up.
That's not what I asked,
Okay,
though.
no.
No. You wrote a report in this case?
Yes.
Did anybody help you write this report?
I wrote the report. I had some help with some minor edits in rearranging, some paragraphs or whatever, but putting things in the right category.
Okay.
But no, I wrote the report.
Who helped you with your report?
Mr. Alessi.
So did you write a preliminary or draft report?
Boom. There it is. Alessi helped her with her report. Now she'll go back and say he just helped her organize it, but he knew that. How did he know that? He knew that from the way that she wrote the report compared to the way she testified, to her experience. And it was backed up by Alessi feeding her information for 5.5 hours or 5 hours. What was this, 7 hours? 7.5 hours, something like that. 4.5, 5 hours in direct. So he knew. That wasn't a question that he took by chance. He didn't need any secret information from anywhere. He read her writing. He read the articles she wrote, and then he compared to her report, compared to the way she testifies and testified at the first trial. And he took a guess that a lawyer helped her write that.
Send it for input and then change it?
No, I didn't change it. I wrote the report, and I would have things in the wrong categories, for instance. Like training experience or whatever.
Who said they were the wrong category?
Well, I think that was my conclusion, actually.
I see. And so how would you go through this editing process? How did that work on this report? Would you send it back and forth?
That was her conclusion. That was Alessi's conclusion. Put this here, put that there. We want more on this. She couldn't conclude that she put it in the wrong categories if he didn't tell her. It's ridiculous. She's just a liar. I mean, she's exposed herself as a liar, an exaggerator, an attention seeker. Total fraudster, in my opinion. This is the quality of experts in innocence frauds. Sometimes they use experts that have big names that really get around, and come up with ridiculous theories.
It got sent back and forth a couple times.
Okay. Now, this report you signed, right?
Did I sign it? Yes.
Nobody else signed it. You.
I wrote it.
Okay. And the reason why I asked if you had help, a lot of your statements and conclusions in this report are different than the testimony that you gave at both the voir dire hearing a year ago and at the trial. Is that fair to say?
She's made different conclusions and different testimony than the first time she testified. How did that happen? That's all Robert Alessi. This is Robert Alessi's report. You know those memoirs, As Told To? It's Robert Alessi's report, As Told To Dr. Marie Russell. I bet it's mad long, too. I don't think she could even remember how many pages her report was.
I don't think it's fair to say.
Okay.
I think that I don't think it's fair.
Okay.
I was convinced, if we would get into specifics, I was convinced of of my opinion back in the voir dire and in the trial.
Aiden convinced me. Aiden Carney convinced me. Turtle Boy convinced me. I was convinced by all the innocence fraud campaign for Karen Reed. Karen Reed convinced me through Turtle Boy.
But I think I stated it wrong. I stated it as if I was talking to other doctors. You know, they say in medicine that nothing is 100% in medicine. That's what we learn, you know, when we go up through medical school and residency and whatever. And in my teachings, I always told people nothing is 100%. And that was the number that I was, you know, that I thought I was being asked for, basically. It was 100%. So that's why I stated my opinion the way I did. But anyways, right,
it doesn't even have to be probable. That's what she's saying. It just could be possible that a dog bit John O'Keefe. So I thought, if it's possible, why not get money? I wrote 2 papers on dog bites and get attention. There's been 2 articles written about this rather unremarkable woman who's worked in emergency medicine. How do you think those got written? Because she's her own PR agent.
Went through material again. I was convinced back then, and I am still convinced right now, that these are caused by dog bites. And not only that, but dog attack.
If you were testifying honestly and earnestly before and you're using doctor speak, why would you need to change it for today, for this report? Why not just continue to offer a natural, honest, thorough opinion that you had before? Why did you have to change it?
I came up with this. I became clearer and clearer every single time that I looked at the pictures, and I just realized
nothing was 100%. I just got more certain as Alessi told me what to say. What a nut job this woman is. She's not a nut job. She's very sane. She's very sane. She's not, I take that back. She's just a piece of work is what I really mean. What a piece of work she is. She's sane. She just went out to get the money and thought she could BS her way through. And Alessi propped her up through the direct.
I understated the last time that I misunderstood the question that was asked of me, you know, regarding my opinion, and so I felt that I had to be clearer.
Did anybody point out to you that it'd be more helpful to the defense case if you had a more assertive opinion?
No, absolutely not.
So when you went through these days and months since the trial, did you have any new information that you looked at that made you realize you underscored the confidence in your opinion?
No.
Okay. Because in your earlier testimony, it's quite different.
I know.
Okay. I want to do this gently, but I want to go through some of that.
Okay.
Okay. When you first testified, you had, how should I say this? You offered opinions that were less than certain about the genesis and cause of the wounds, didn't you?
I think it sounded like I was not certain. However, I was certain. I just didn't express it correctly.
Okay. When you first testified in the voir dire about...
Right. She just used words that sounded like she was uncertain, but she was very certain. When you're certain about something, you don't mince your words. You just say it. This is what it is. It's a dog bite. Probably to a degree of medical certainty, because she was play acting. She was LARPing as an expert witness, and she still is. She thought that that's what they said, but she wasn't certain enough. Alessi told her she wasn't certain enough. They needed more certain testimony. So she gave it to him this time. She's absolutely certain.
Out some of these wounds. You were asked what kind of animal you thought caused the wounds, and you said, most likely a dog.
Correct.
Right. You didn't say beyond a reasonable degree of dog bite certainty, did you?
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the basis of the question?
The objection is, he said beyond a reasonable doubt, and that
No, no, he didn't say doubt. He said degree of medical certainty.
He said beyond.
Right, beyond a reasonable degree of medical certainty. So I heard you didn't get to the certainty, you just heard beyond reasonable and objected. So based on that, the objection's overruled.
Let me phrase to make it clear. You didn't say to a reasonable degree of medical certainty.
So that's Alessi jumping in. I thought it was Yannetti the first time. Their voices are similar, jumping in, but it's Alessi jumping in, trying to just get Brennan off his rhythm and trying to give Russell, Dr. Russell, a moment to think and come up with a better answer, because she's getting pummeled here.
That the bites you looked at were a dog.
I did in one of the okay, maybe in the next one. Okay. But yeah, if I wasn't asked about reasonable degree of medical certainty, I didn't, I may not have expressed it.
The court herself asked you, do you know what kind of animal? And you said, yes, most likely a dog.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So you didn't express certainty at that point?
Yes, but again, thinking as a doctor and not a lawyer or a judge or someone, I'm thinking as a doctor, I'm thinking that it's never 100%. And so that's what I was going by. If I was going to be teaching medical students what those wounds were, you know, or, you know, another group of wounds, I tell people never 100% in medicine. So that's where that came from. And I apologize if I confused the court.
I don't.
There's a degree, we have a degree that you might be dying of cancer. Might be. It's never 100%, but do you want to do chemo? Might be something else. Is that how you diagnose patients? Hey, Manny. RG. Karen Reed. Sucks. Turtle Boy. Thanks for covering this like nobody has. You're welcome.
I don't think there's any confusion. You use the word likely. The word possibly is even less certain than likely, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, when you're a doctor and you look at something and you say, well, the likelihood is this is the cause of this.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That would be a stronger opinion than saying it's possibly this.
Correct.
Possible is even less certain, isn't it? At trial, when you were asked about the cause of the injuries, I'm going to quote you, and I can show you if you'd like. It's the trial transcript, page 19, line 21. What you said is, I believe that these injuries were sustained by an animal, possibly a large dog, because of the patent injuries.
Yes.
Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Very different. I'll just finish if I could. Very different than what you're opining today at this hearing.
I'm sorry that you think it is, and I can understand how you believe it is, but it's not different to me. I believed it was a dog. I was convinced.
A cat and a dog are not different to me. A square and a circle. I know you may think they're different, but they're not different to me. A giraffe and an elephant. I know you think they're different, but they're not different to me. They're both wild animals. What the heck is she talking about?
It was a dog then, but going by the no 100% in medicine, I didn't say that. I am still convinced it's a dog. The one thing that's a little different is that it's an attack. I after counting the series of wounds and whatever, I am convinced not only was it a dog, striking once or twice, but it was actually multiple strikes by that dog.
Okay, now I want to get back to the testimony we were talking about, your testimony at trial, under oath, okay? Your testimony is you believe they were sustained by an animal, possibly a large dog. You expressed uncertainty that you didn't even know or have an opinion about what type of animal caused these wounds at that time. Is that fair to say?
I was leaving room for if there was for instance, another kind of animal in the vicinity that, but there's no evidence to that. There's no, paw marks or anything in the ground.
What other animal do you think was in the vicinity that would have caused these?
I don't know, but I was just leaving that. Again, being a trained physician, there's no absolutes, and so that's what.
He could have been attacked by a wild cheetah, a giraffe, an elephant, stomped by an elephant. I don't know. I saw no elephant footprints, so I just went with dog, probably. But it's not 100% because nothing's 100% medicine.
No.
The way I approached it. I'm sorry.
Did you inquire to see more discoveries, to see if there was a pack of wild animals in 34 Fairview that would have caused this? Did you reach out to any of the witnesses or the lawyers and ask if there was any reports or information suggesting another animal?
I did not.
Were you curious?
I did not. I just didn't do it.
Okay. You were asked by Mr. Jackson, trial page 23, line 3. He provided the question, does this appear as it's a pattern injury that you see appear consistent with an animal or a large dog? And you said yes. So you included that this, again, could have been a dog or an animal in your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Mm-hmm. I haven't.
So I'm sorry, we can't take a, we need a yes or no.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Again at trial, page 23, line 6. You were asked, does the number of injuries that you see here relegated to just the right arm, is that consistent with an animal or a large dog? And you said, yes, it can be. Okay. Do you want to see your testimony? Because I don't want to just put words in your mouth.
No, I trust you.
And so, thank you. So the question that you were asked was positing that it could have been not just a dog, but any animal. And you were agreeable to that at that time.
Again, thinking like a medical doctor, not a participant in a legal setting.
Not to belabor, but these are your words, so I want to talk to you about them. You were again asked, page 23, line 18, by Mr. Jackson, based on everything that we've discussed today, doctor, is it your opinion, based on a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that these injuries were from an animal attack, possibly a large dog? And you said yes. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so your opinions today that this was exclusively an animal attack caused by a large dog, that is much different in kind than the uncertainty and possibility that you admitted under oath during trial, in this case, the first time, or actually the second time you testified about it. Wouldn't that be fair to say?
It sounds like it, yes.
Okay. I think this is a good point to stop because we need to get another date. You're not going to finish in 3 minutes, right? No, okay. All right.
Right when she's being demolished. Interesting thing about Dr. Marie Russell is she was sued for medical malpractice by one of her patients. Link is in the description of this episode. Daniel Cisneros. You can see Marie Russell's right there as a defendant for not catching his neck pain. I believe this happened, if I'm remembering correctly, happened in prison when she was working as a prison doctor. So she's still, I think this may still go on. It's 2023. Oh no, this is the opinion. That's the judgment. There you go. So she said she wasn't going to be in town when they're rescheduling this, I believe for the 6th or the 7th of January or the 8th. I can't remember what they settled on. And that made me think that she was getting paid some kind of lump sum, and that Karen Reed's telling everyone she's broke and that they can't work by the hour, which is really where they pad their bill. Anything else that I missed? I think that's what I have for today, guys. Just an incredible cross by Hank Brennan, who was a prosecutor, defense attorney, and has been specially appointed in this case to represent the Commonwealth. Pretty amazing stuff. I will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a terrific night, everybody. Gonna end the way I usually do with the song I wrote. I hit my boyfriend with my car. Have a terrific night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern.
I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system a clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mom. My innocence fraud campaign is my biggest hit yet. I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system my clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mark. My innocence from